Welcome back. In this section, we want to take a look at the tools part of the Android developer website, see where you can get the SDK, and begin our discussion about the Android Studio IDE. So this is the developer.android.com site, as we looked at before. If I click now on the Tools section under the Developer options, this is the page that shows the Android Studio IDE. Now I have to give you a little bit of history in case you encounter some older Android applications. When Android was first released, the developer kit supported an Eclipse plugin called the ADT, the Android Developer Tools. And when you downloaded the Android SDK, you normally downloaded a bundle that involved both the software development kit, as we're going to see, and Eclipse with these Android Developer Tools in it. And in my own personal opinion, I think those developer tools, that was a better Eclipse than Eclipse. The Eclipse had gotten large and bloated over the years and had some stability problems, and yet the Android SDK, the ADK, or the ADT tools inside of Eclipse were excellent, worked extremely well. But there's only so far they could push that. And during Google I/O approximately 2 years ago, the one during 2013, Google announced that they were instead switching to a new IDE, Android Studio, based on IntelliJ IDEA instead of on Eclipse. And part of the reason for this was that they also were moving away from what we used to call IDE builds, where you built your software entirely inside the IDE and never had a process that worked outside of it. Instead, they were going to a build tool called Gradle. We're going to take a look at Gradle. The Eclipse support for Gradle was and is not all that hot. But IntelliJ's IDEA IDE, and therefore Android Studio, which is based on it, are extremely effective at working with Gradle, and this has opened up many, many possibilities. So here is the only officially supported Android IDE called Android Studio. When you download the bundle here, you get the IDE, you get the SDK tools, you get the current version of the platform. Remember, there were multiple ways of measuring these platforms. There was a traditional version number like 5.0 or 4.1 or what have you. There was the dessert name, here shown as Lollipop, or could be Kit Kat or older. And then there were the API numbers as well. Well, here we see two of them being used. And when we open up the SDK Manager, we'll be able to install as many of the older ones as we decide to support. We also get something called an emulator. It turns out that developing in an Android application requires either an emulator or a connected device or both. And most people work with both on a regular basis. We're going to work with at least one and possibly multiple emulators during this video course. We also will demonstrate how to deploy to a connected device and work with that in addition or instead of using the emulator. Now, this website has detected that I'm currently on a Mac and therefore has presented me with a download bundle for a Mac. But if I was simply to scroll down below it, once I get past all the different advertising, they do show how you could download for alternative mechanisms like Windows here or Linux, or downloading just the SDK tools, and so on. So that there are plenty of links throughout this page in order to get the SDK tools. In the next section, we'll start up Android Studio, take a look at the SDK Manager, get it configured properly, and then start to build an Android application.